We come to business questions. Shall leave the House, Jesse Norman.
Here, here.
Thank you very much indeed, Mr. Speaker. Just the welcome I was hoping for. Will the Leader of the House give us the forthcoming business?
Leader of the House.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I shall. The business for the week commencing the 27th of January includes Monday the 27th of January, general debate on the creative industries. Tuesday the 28th of January, remaining stages of the Water Special Measures Bill, Lords. Wednesday the 29th of January, second reading of the Arbitration Bill, Lords, followed by motions relating to the Charter for Budget Responsibility and the Welfare Cap. Thursday the 30th of January, general debate on proportional representation for general elections, followed by general debate on the future of local post office services. These subjects debates were determined by the Backbench Business Committee. Thursday the 31st of January, the House will not be sitting. Provisional business for the week commencing the 3rd of February will include Monday the 3rd of February, second reading of the Public Authorities Fraud, Error and Recovery Bill. Tuesday the 4th of February, motions to approve the draft Social Security Benefits Uprating Order 2025 and the draft Guaranteed Minimum Pensions Increase Order 2025. Wednesday the 5th of February, motions relating to the Police Grant and the Local Government Finance Reports. Thursday the 6th of February, business to be determined by the Backbench Business Committee. Friday the 7th of February, the House will not be sitting.
Thank you very much indeed, Mr. Speaker. Over the past few months, the Labour Party has been generous indeed in offering the people of this country regular evidence of its remarkable incompetence. But even by their formidable standards, Mr. Speaker, they have excelled themselves this week. The Prime Minister said some time ago in terms that he prefers Davos to Westminster. But this week, he has left the global hobnobbing and après-ski at the World Economic Forum to the Chancellor of the Exchequer to assist her in her relentless search for growth. Her latest idea is to revive the third runway at Heathrow, a project so toxic to her Labour colleagues that it had been briefed against by the Energy Secretary and publicly rejected by the Mayor of London before it was even pre-announced. As so often, we will have to wait, I'm afraid, for the announcement itself to be made in this House. Meanwhile, the Chancellor's wizard wheeze of the autumn to set up a new Office for Value of Money was publicly rubbished in the most unsparing terms by the chair of the Treasury Committee, who described it as, and I quote, an understaffed, poorly defined organisation set up with a vague agreement and no clear plan to measure its effectiveness. That's from the Chancellor's own Labour colleague, the Right Honourable Member for Hackney South and Shoreditch. Spending reviews are always fraught, and this one will be still more so because the Chancellor has boxed herself in so badly on taxes and spending. What the government thinks is going to be achieved by a couple of dozen hastily assembled newbies and some adolescent management consultants running around, apart from making things even worse, is hard to imagine. And in case we forget, Mr. Speaker, you and I and everyone else in this chamber, and indeed every other taxpayer, is paying for it. Then we had no less a figure than the director of the Institute for Fiscal Studies weighing in. He noted that the government has done nothing but talk about growth ever since the last general election, but then noted that at the same time we've seen, and I'm quoting, the imposition of additional employment regulation, further regulation of rental housing, a hike in stamp duty, a big increase in tax on employers, inflation-busting rise in the minimum wage, a refusal to contemplate any serious liberalisation of trade or freedom of movement, and perhaps a clampdown on immigration. And he asked, what is this government's theory of growth? And answered his own question, nobody knows. These are just three examples of the government's absolute lack of seriousness in economics. But as we have just heard in the UQ, there is a serious issue in the area of law which they cannot avoid. Let me just remind the House what's happened. The Attorney-General has been repeatedly asked whether he has or has had a conflict of interest in relation to legal matters that could affect his former client, Gerry Adams. In response, a spokesman for the Prime Minister has highlighted systems to prevent potential conflicts from arising. The Attorney-General himself has cited the Convention that law officers do not discuss their advice to ministers and has disclaimed any connection between his work for Mr Adams and the Legacy Act. As the Honourable Lady, the Solicitor General, just said, the standard they are aspiring to is to be beyond reproach. The problem is that none of this actually addresses the issue of whether or not the Attorney-General in fact recused himself. This does not fall either within the Law Officers' Convention or the cab rank principle. He either did do that or he didn't. The problem is made worse when one reflects that this Attorney-General is the first to have come into government directly from private practice in the history of the office, a point completely ignored in the last UQ, and that this practice was not one of the less political areas of law, corporate law or chancery, for example, but squarely in the highly contentious and political area of human rights, some of it in Northern Ireland. There's no reason in law or ministerial practice whatever why the Attorney should not be transparent on this issue, as he has been already in relation to the Legacy Act, and there is a strong public interest that he should do so. His legacy comment proves that he himself concedes the point about the importance of clarity in this area. In his recent letter regarding the former anti-corruption minister, the independent advisor on ministerial standards highlighted the ministerial code, saying that, and I quote, "Ministers must ensure that no conflict could reasonably be perceived to arise between public duties and private interest. This conflict clearly exists now in relation to the Attorney-General." Does the Leader of the House share my view that we should have a debate on the standards to be applied in these complex cases where there is a potential conflict between the ministerial code, which demands the avoidance of being above doubt, and the actual statements that have been made by the government in defence of the law officer concerned?
Leader of the House.
Thank you very much, Mr Speaker. And I'm sure, first of all, that the thoughts of the whole House and the whole country will again today be with the families of BB, Elsie and Alice, the two teachers, the neighbour and all the children who attended the Taylor Swift dance class in Southport after the horrific attack and murders last summer. What they face is truly unimaginable. This tragedy is made all the worse by the fact, as the Home Secretary said this week, it could have been prevented. The House will be aware that the Government has set out a number of actions we are taking in response: an independent public inquiry, which will leave no stone unturned, an end-to-end review of Prevent, stronger measures to tackle online knife sales and knife crime, and a quicker piece of work looking at the limitations around the current definition of terrorism. I will ensure, Madam Deputy Speaker, that the House is kept up to date on these and related matters. The Honourable Gentleman raises this morning issues of standards in public life, and I think, as I gently reminded him last week, this is perhaps not the record that he wants to draw on when comparing their government with ours. But he does raise some important questions which have just been answered in an urgent question. As he will know, the Cabinet Secretary has replied to the Shadow Justice Secretary that the Attorney-General has properly declared his interest in his previous role as a senior barrister. As a barrister with a wide-ranging legal practice, the Attorney-General will have represented many clients, and in line with how the Bar Association rules, barristers do not choose their clients, nor do they associate themselves with their clients' opinions or behaviour by virtue of representing them. The Cabinet Secretary has explained that, as well as the declarations process for all ministers, the Attorney-General's office has a rigorous system in place to ensure that a law officer would not be consulted on any matter that could give rise to a potential conflict of interest. He will know that these arrangements are long-standing and have been in practice in successive administrations. I'm not sure if he is arguing this morning that we should no longer have an Attorney-General who was recently involved at the highest level in private practice. I'm not sure if that is what he is arguing. Perhaps he can let us know if he is. But, Madam Deputy Speaker, today is actually a very special day. It could have been a very historic day, in fact, Madam Deputy Speaker, because today is the last day that the former Prime Minister could have called a general election. Oh, how different things could have been. They would have still been on this side with 3 times as many members as they've got now. The honourable gentleman would still be enjoying themselves on the back benches, and the House would not have the delights of the honourable members for Clacton and Boston and Skegness with their presence instead. But instead, we are 6 months into a Labour government. And I'm sure they do regret calling the general election early, but I'm afraid, Madam Deputy Speaker, the country doesn't. Just imagine for a moment what the country would be facing today. Doctors still on strike, making the winter crisis in the NHS even worse. Public services facing huge cuts due to their economic plans. Waiting lists ever growing, leaving people sick and out of work. The hospital building programme still on the never-never. The asylum backlog rising with no plan to get it down. More and more councils going bust. More trains being cancelled than they run. The black hole in the public finances still going. And let's not even imagine what would be happening with our prisons. The country on its knees, living standards falling, Britain an embarrassment around the world, and politics in the doldrums. But thankfully, Madam Deputy Speaker, the former Prime Minister made a big misjudgment for the Tory party, but a good decision for the country. And he called the election early because he wanted out. And we've not been able to put everything right immediately. The problems run too deep. But we have made a lot of progress. We've ended the doctors' strike and put record investment into the NHS. We've reset our international relationships, restoring Britain as a global leader. We've tackled the asylum backlog and achieved record numbers of returns. We're giving workers security and dignity. We're turbocharging house building with new ambitious targets. We're working towards energy security with lower bills and GB energies. And trains are now running in the interests of passengers. So he might be sorry he's now sitting on that side, his party still licking their wounds, but the country is getting the change they voted for.
James Frith.
Thank you, Madam Deputy Speaker. My constituents, Mandy and Bernie, along with many other homeowners in Bury North, are facing serious issues with Residential Management Group, RMG. Despite dutifully paying their service charges, residents of Wharfside Apartments and Broadoak have been hit with additional fees and alarming practices equating to neglect and exploitation. Overpricing, sudden price changes, premature bailiff actions, non-compliance with fire safety and accessibility standards, to name a few. This is not an isolated case. Across the country, 70 members of Parliament serving in this House have constituents facing the same level of rogue management companies. Can my right honourable friend assure my constituents that under Labour these unscrupulous practices will be tackled, and would she provide time in the House for a debate on this urgent matter?
House.
Can I thank him for bringing this issue to this session yet again? And he, as ever, is raising very important issues to his constituents in Bury North. I'm also one of those members who has a high caseload of these issues. He will know that the government is committed to ensuring that homeowners are protected from abuse and poor service from in the hands of unscrupulous managing agents. That's why we're bringing forward a draft leasehold reform bill later in this session, and I will ensure the House is updated on its progress.
Liberal Democrat spokesperson Maria Goldman.
Thank you, Madam Deputy Speaker. Can I echo the leader's words in relation to the Southport attack? And may I take this opportunity to welcome the ceasefire in Gaza? Many of my constituents have contacted me about this conflict, and I know it will be a comfort for them to know that bombs are no longer falling in that part of the world, and long may the peace last. Madam Deputy Speaker, at the beginning of January, the Care Quality Commission published a report into the maternity services at Broomfield Hospital, which serves my Chelmsford constituency. Worryingly, it downgraded the service from requires improvement to inadequate. A few days ago, the CQC published 2 more reports about maternity services, this time for the 2 other major hospitals run by the Mids and South Essex NHS Foundation Trust, Basildon and Southend. They were both rated as requires improvement. This is understandably concerning to my constituents who are served by all 3 hospitals. Although when I visited Broomfield's maternity services a couple of weeks ago, I was pleased to see encouraging signs of improvement, so I hope my constituents will take some comfort from that. But it's worth noting that the CQC's reports in all 3 cases were based on assessments carried out in March 2024. Does the Leader of the House think it's acceptable for the CQC to take such a long time to report their findings on services that are obviously struggling? And will she grant government time for a debate to discuss whether the CQC needs better resourcing and support to carry out its important duties?
Well, can I thank her firstly for her comments about the ceasefire in Israel and Gaza, which since we last mentioned that last week, it seems to be holding to some degree, and that's to be very welcomed. Can I also thank her for yet again raising such an important issue, not only to her constituents, but I think to many members across this House. Too many women are not receiving the maternity care that they deserve, and I'm really sorry to hear about the particular case she raises, but I'm glad there are some signs now of improvement to her local services. Many patients, as she say, rely on the CQC assessments to make decisions about their care. The independent DASH review of the CQC highlights some really serious failings with the watchdog, and as the Secretary of State said recently, it's not fit for purpose. The government is determined that we take action and that people can get the confidence in the service that they need, and we're pressing the CQC to raise standards and deliver significant performance improvements. I know that the Chief Exec and the Chair of the CQC were at the Health and Social Care Select Committee recently, last week, and I will ensure that the House is continually updated on these important matters.
Liz Twist.
Thank you, Madam Deputy Speaker. Last week I visited Briarwood, an acute dementia care facility run by mental health charity Every Turn in Blaydon. Now, Every Turn runs a wide range of mental health services, including their safe havens open for anyone to access just by walking in off the street to start receiving mental health support. And today one opens in George Street Social in Newcastle, serving Tyneside. Will the Minister join me in congratulating them on opening this hub, which will provide support to so many people? And can we have a debate in government time on how we can make mental health support easily accessible in our communities?
Well, I'm pleased to join her in congratulating the Every Turn charity that she mentions and all the outstanding work that they do around supporting those with mental health and dementia in her constituency. She will know that we do have the mental health bill currently making its way in the Lords, and I think that would be a very good place to debate these issues further when it comes back to the House.
Chair of the Backbench Business Committee, Bob Blackman.
Thank you, Madam Deputy Speaker. In addition to the business that the Leader has announced on Backbench Business Committee time, on the 6th of February in the Chamber, there'll be a debate on government support for coalfield communities, followed by a debate on financial education. This was the debate that was due to take place on Monday, but time did not allow. In addition, the business in Westminster Hall, which the Backbench Business Committee has agreed, on Tuesday the 28th of January, there'll be a debate on road safety for young drivers, and on Thursday the 30th of January, there'll be a debate on medicinal cannabis, and followed by a gap, which we'll announce very shortly. On the 4th of February, there'll be a debate on National Apprenticeships Week, and on Thursday the 6th, there'll be a debate on improving rail services with open access operators, followed by a debate on debt cancellation for low-income countries. And with the Speaker's permission, on Tuesday the 11th of February, there'll be a debate on the cost of energy. And I would ask the Leader if she could advise us at an early notice of when the dates are going to be for Estimates Day debates. Now, in addition, Madam Deputy Speaker, on Sunday, many of my constituents gathered and paid for a screening of the film Emergency in the Harrow cinema. About 30 to 40 minutes into the screening of that film, masked Khalistani terrorists burst in and threatened members of the audience and forced the screening to end. I understand that similar disruption took place in Wolverhampton, Birmingham, Slough, Staines and Manchester. As a result, View Cinemas and Cineworld have pulled the film from being screened. Now, this is a very controversial film, and I don't comment on the quality or content of the film, but I do defend the right of my constituents and others to be able to view that film and make a decision on it. It covers the period when Indira Gandhi was the Prime Minister of India, and it is very controversial, and there are certain views that this is an anti-Sikh film. But I think members of our constituents should be able to see this film and judge for themselves and not be threatened by thugs who want to disrupt democratic opportunities to see public films. So could we have a statement from the Home Secretary next week on what is going to be done to ensure that people who want to see these films, and they've been passed by the censors, want to see these films can do so in peace and harmony. I absolutely defend the right of people to demonstrate outside the cinemas, but not to disrupt the actual viewing.
Well, can I first of all thank him for announcing forthcoming slots for Backbench Business Committee, which I know will be of great interest to the House. He raises a very important matter about the relationship between free speech and the right to protest peacefully, and for people to be able to go about doing their activities freely, whatever they choose to do, whether that's seeing a film that, as he says, has been agreed by the censors and all of those that look at these issues. I will certainly make sure that he and indeed the whole House, Madam Deputy Speaker, does get an update on those very important matters that he raises.
Thank you, Madam Deputy Speaker. Research from the Centre for Cities show that the average wages in the North East is £17,000 per annum, less than here in London. It's likely to be much higher than that in constituencies like mine and Blyth and Ashington. Can we have a debate in government time to discuss how the Labour government will bridge this staggering gap and ensure that there's good, well-paid, secure jobs in the North East of England?
Well, can I thank him for raising that? He's absolutely right that one of the key reason why we've suffered in this country over the last 14 years in particular from stagnant growth and falling living standards is because we have these widespread regional inequalities, we have poor productivity, we don't have the high level of skills that we need, and we have deep-seated health inequalities as well, which also affect people's ability to work and to work at the wages that they deserve. And that's why this government's agenda for making sure that we do get the growth that the country needs, that is growth that is shared around the country, that is growth that is sustainable, that is underpinned by a healthy economy, by a highly skilled, productive economy, and that the new jobs of the future are felt in his constituency and other parts of the country that deserve to get them.
Simon Hoare.
Thank you very much indeed, Madam Deputy Speaker. Can I thank the leader for her earlier statement? Lib Dem-controlled Dorset Council is proposing to introduce nighttime car parking charges. This would be a devastating impact on the market towns of Verwood, Blandford Forum, Gillingham, Shaftesbury and Stirling-St-Newton in my constituency, bringing into doubt the viability of many businesses providing entertainment and hospitality services. Would the leader join me in, first of all, condemning that proposal to introduce these charges, and secondly, in government time, find time for a debate of how government policy and other policies can support rural market towns and their local economies?
Well, can I thank him for that? And as someone who represents a city centre, I can assure him I'm very well aware of the issues around car parking charges and what public attention they really do give rise to. And he's absolutely right that those things have to be brought in whilst balancing the needs of local independent shops and the hospitality sector in the area. I'm sure the local authority has heard his question today, but I will ensure that he does get a ministerial response about those things.
Claire Hughes.
Mr. Speaker, last week a broken mains water pipe in my constituency left 40,000 people without water. The engineers worked really hard to fix the repair in really challenging circumstances, but despite an incredible community response, too many people face an unacceptable wait for bottled water. We need to get much better at identifying more vulnerable people during emergency situations using the information that we already hold across various government departments. Will the Leader of the House ask the relevant ministers to meet with me to discuss how we can better use data to improve our response during emergencies like this?
Well, can I first of all thank the honourable member for her really fantastic job in stepping in an emergency last week as my PPS. I couldn't have got through business questions last week without her great support. But she raises an issue that I know she's been raising very strongly for her constituents about last week's water outage, and my sympathies go to her constituents. She'll know that it is the responsibility of water companies to manage such disruption. They don't do that well in many cases, and that's why we've brought in a water bill that will drive meaningful improvements in the water industry, and the Cabinet Office will soon be issuing guidance about how to better respond to these local emergencies, and I will ensure that she gets the meeting she's asked for.
Wishart.
Thank you very much, Madam Deputy Speaker. The EU offered the UK a youth mobility scheme which would allow the invaluable opportunity for our young people to live, work and love across a continent. It was rejected out of hand. Since then, the EU have offered a customs arrangements for the UK government, which again has been rejected out of hand. So can we have a debate about how this EU reset is going, and will she confirm that we are forever doomed to this chaotic and self-defeating hard Brexit?
Well, he will know that we've been absolutely clear that there will be no return to a single market, to the customs union, to freedom of movement, and we've got no plans for a youth mobility scheme. That's because we feel that we can make great progress in resetting our relationships with the European Union, which are underway, and that the country doesn't need further disruption in this area, but needs to make sure that we get the trade agreements and the relationship with the EU to better get outcomes for those in Scotland and elsewhere.
Samantha Niblett.
Thank you, Madam Deputy Speaker. In South Derbyshire, we have an incinerator at Drakelow, and just off my patch in neighbouring Derby, there's an incinerator at Sinfin. But despite that, 9 miles from the one at Sinfin and just 4.8 miles from the one at Drakelow, there has been an application for another one that has already been rejected by both district and county councils, but most importantly, rejected by my constituents. Community Against the Swaddling Coat Incinerator is a data-driven and facts-based campaign led by Dr. Tracy Want. We don't just not want it, by the numbers, we don't need it, especially as this incinerator is not significant infrastructure of national importance, and as a government we're seeking to reduce waste. So will the Leader of the House please consider a debate in government time on the sense with where we agree to build new incinerators? There is certainly no sense in building another one in South Derbyshire.
Leader of the House.
Well, can I thank her? I think this is her first business question today, and she's a fantastic new MP for South Derbyshire, yet again raising issues of concern to them. She'll know that the government is committed to delivering a package of reform, transitioning to a circular economy, which will ultimately dramatically reduce our reliance on waste incineration. We will only back new waste incineration projects where they meet strict new conditions, which we recently set out. But this issue does get raised on many times with me in business question. I can see the chair of the backbench business committee is still in his place, and I think she should get together with some other colleagues and try and get a broader debate on this matter.
John Lamont.
Thank you very much. I wonder if the Leader of the House would allow time for debate on the importance of volunteering and to celebrate community spirit. Coldstream Community Council recently hosted the Senior Citizens Christmas Party in the town's community centre. Over 100 local residents enjoyed a belated Christmas meal and entertainment. But this would not have happened had it not been for the hard work of the volunteers. Will the Leader of the House join me in thanking Fiona Shepherd, the Community Council and the team from presenting Coldstream for making this event happen and for everything they do to support Coldstream community?
Leader of the House.
Well, I absolutely will join him in congratulating those from his constituency in the Coldstream Community Council and Fiona Shepherd and others. That sounds like a wonderful way of bringing people together at the Christmas lunch. He does attend these sessions regularly. I am just waiting for that invitation to his constituency, to all the great things that he often describes in these sessions, and he's highlighted another one today.
Dawn Butler.
Madam Deputy Speaker. My constituents in Brent East work extremely hard, and some are able to purchase a smartphone. Yesterday we heard from the Met that an estimated 64,000 phones were stolen across London in 2023. I think one mobile phone is stolen every 4 minutes in Westminster. The Met and the Mayor of London are working together to try and combat this escalation, but more work is needed, especially with the providers like Apple and Google. Will the Leader of the House please consider having a debate in government time to discuss this important issue?
The House.
Well, she raises a really important matter. Mobile phone theft can be incredibly traumatic, as well as a really bad problem for not just the individuals that face it, but for society as a whole. And antisocial behaviour chips away at communities' sense of confidence and pride, and that's why this government's taking strong action to stop antisocial behaviour, bringing in respect orders and a number of other measures. I will ensure that the Minister gives her a full response on these matters, and I'm sure this would make a very good topic for a debate.
Vicky Slade.
Thank you, Madam Deputy Speaker. Many of our professionals, including doctors, teachers and police officers, are struggling with recruitment and retention. They also serve our communities with dedication and selflessness, and we rely on them. But rules relating to their pensions are either putting them in a situation where, in the case of doctors, it's costing them money to work additional hours for the NHS, or in the case of long-standing teachers and police officers, changes to their pensions partway through leaves them owing money or being trapped, unable to claim pensions due to legislative change. Will the Leader of the House agree to give us a debate in government time on public sector pensions?
Yeah. Leader of the House.
Well, she will know this issue of public sector pensions and the often disincentives it can apply to those, especially in sort of senior roles, has been a matter of debate over recent years. I understood that most of those issues had been resolved, but I will certainly get an update for her, and if there are still matters there that need wider discussion, I will ensure that the House is made aware of them.
Jazz Atwell.
Thank you, Madam Deputy Speaker. My neighbours and I in Ilford South are concerned about reports of democratic backsliding and human rights abuses in Pakistan. Reports of female political candidates being harassed and intimidated to stand down, male candidates being imprisoned, journalists going missing and protesters losing their lives have all sadly become the norm. Pakistan is a human rights priority country for FCDO and is committed to ensuring human rights, democracy and the rule of law there. Will the Leader agree with me that we must continue to work towards guaranteeing the rights of all people in Pakistan, and could I ask her for government time for a debate on this important issue?
Leader of the House.
Well, we as a government urge Pakistan to uphold their international obligations and human rights. He may be aware that in November the Parliamentary Under-Secretary of State visited Pakistan. He highlighted our concerns about their democratic values and upholding those around protests, military courts and the need to uphold their fundamental functions. We continue to urge Pakistan to address concerns about the fairness of the February 2024 elections and to uphold its obligations under international law and elsewhere. But I will ensure the House is kept updated with these important matters.
Dame Harriet Baldwin.
Thank you, Madam Deputy Speaker. Replies to parliamentary questions that I'm posing are often late, they're often evasive, they often refer to websites that are not frequently updated, and sometimes they're even overtly political. And I know that the Leader of the House cares passionately about this and improving performance in this area. So could she give a statement to the House to update us on how she's working to get better responses to parliamentary questions from departments?
Leader of the House.
Well, she's absolutely right. I take these issues incredibly seriously. I think that the House absolutely has a right to, and members of it have a right to timely and proper and full replies to parliamentary questions that they table. I have recently written to the Cabinet about their duties in this regard, and I regularly remind them of that. She will know that the Procedure Committee also takes its responsibility very seriously to monitor the timeliness of parliamentary questions. We have seen a dramatic increase in the number of written parliamentary questions being tabled since the general election, but that is no excuse for what she describes. So I would encourage her and any other member to let me know where they receive a particularly poor or late reply to a parliamentary question.
Richard Bergen.
Thank you, Madam Deputy Speaker. Last week I visited Leeds City College at the invitation of UCU union reps and heard about the great work that they do in campuses across the city, including even at Temple Newton House in my own constituency, in very challenging circumstances. Could we possibly have a debate in government time on the importance of the FE sector, the further education sector? It's really important that alongside the UCU's demand for a restoration of national pay bargaining, that the FE sector isn't seen as some kind of poor relation of the HE sector. The FE sector does a vital job for people in our communities and for the economy and for infrastructure as a whole.
Leader of the House.
Well, he's absolutely right that the further education sector does an immense job in ensuring that young people in this country have the skills and the ambitions and the pathways into the great jobs of the future and, of course, the jobs of today as well. They have historically often been seen as the poor Cinderella in the sector. That's not the view that this government takes. That's why we have given a record settlement in the recent budget to the FE sector. We have got education questions coming up at the end of January, but I'm sure this would make a very good topic for a debate.
Bradley Thomas.
Thank you, Madam Deputy Speaker. John Cross, a Bromsgrove pharmacist who believed in the importance of vaccines, took his own life after suffering from paralysing complications after he received the COVID vaccine. John's widow, Christine, and their children have been campaigning for justice in John's memory, including seeking compensation from the Vaccine Damage Payment Scheme. Unfortunately, their claim has been rejected. Does the Leader of the House agree with me that this House should debate, on the floor of this House, the Vaccine Damage Payment Scheme in relation to COVID vaccines, and will she assist me in brokering a meeting between the Cross family and the Health Secretary?
Leader of the House.
Well, I'm really sorry to hear of what happened to John Cross and all that his family must be going through subsequently, and their challenge in getting the compensation that they deserve. I will certainly arrange for a ministerial response for him and indeed a ministerial meeting with the family.
Douglas McAllister.
Thank you, Madam Deputy Speaker. My constituency of Western Bartonshire is amongst the UK's worst hotspots for deaths linked to a cancer caused by exposure to asbestos at work. 344 deaths since 1980. And in the last 5 years, 16 men and 5 women have died from cancer caused by exposure to asbestos. Madam Deputy Speaker, the Labour government in 2006 passed the Compensation Act to make it easier for people diagnosed with mesothelioma to claim full compensation, with the need to find just one negligent employer rather than them all. However, the Act does not apply to those suffering from asbestos-related lung cancer. Can the Leader of the House arrange for an urgent debate in government time to address this injustice and help deliver a full and fair compensation for all those who are not protected from asbestos exposure at work?
Leader of the House.
Well, can I thank him greatly for raising this issue of those who were had exposure to asbestos and those suffering from mesothelioma, which is something that now is really coming through very strongly. In the previous parliaments, we did have a number of honourable members who really strongly led on these issues. Those members are no longer in the House. So I would encourage him to become a parliamentarian leader on these issues and perhaps get the debates and continue to raise these issues, as I will do now on his behalf with ministers, and make sure we get some further action.
Clive Jones.
Thank you very much, Madam Deputy Speaker. I declare my interest as a Governor of the Royal Berkshire Hospital, and I have a family member with shares in a medical company. My constituents in Wokingham are heartbroken by the government's decision to push the start date of the Royal Berks reconstruction to 2037. This decision will disappoint many patients and staff. There is a £400 million total of maintenance backlogs, statutory improvements and other capital expenditure that the Royal Berkshire Hospital requires over the next 10 years. Will the Leader of the House ensure that there are future opportunities in government time to debate the progress of the campaign so that maintenance issue caused by the delay to the rebuild can be raised?
The House.
Well, can I thank him for raising this? And I recognise that he and his constituents, will be disappointed with what is happening in terms of his local hospital. He will, I'm sure, though, recognise that the previous government's commitment to 40 new hospitals weren't funded. There were no timelines. They were on the never, never. And that's why this government's had to take the decision to be completely honest with people, have a programme that we think is deliverable, that there is the money there for. That unfortunately does mean that the timeline for some hospitals is longer than the fictional ones that they were previously presented with. The Secretary of State did give a very lengthy statement on this matter earlier this week, and I will ensure, and I know he will want to, keep the House strongly updated on these issues.
Clive Hereford.
Thank you, Madam Deputy Speaker. I have a 13-year-old constituent who suffers with Duchenne's muscular dystrophy. This is a muscle wasting disease which he was diagnosed with very late, at age 11, due to what's called a spontaneous mutation. Nonetheless, the condition has actually progressed very, very rapidly. There is a medication that can delay the advancement of the illness, which is Ginovinosat, which is being made available free to the NHS. But the hospitals that want to use it on their patients need some financial assistance to roll it out as part of an early access programme. So I wonder if we could have a statement from the Department of Health on this issue so that we can actually make representations on behalf of our constituents who suffer with Duchenne's.
Leader of the House.
Well, can I thank him for raising the issue of Duchenne's and his constituent and the much needed treatment that they need. I'm pleased to hear that the treatment is being made available to the NHS for free, but I hear what he is saying about hospitals actually being able to access that in a speedy fashion such that his constituent could get treatment. I will absolutely ensure that the relevant minister has heard his question today, and if a response is not to his liking, I will help him to secure some time on that.
Wendy Martin.
Thank you, Madam Deputy Speaker. I had intended to raise today the appalling decision of the Planning Inspectorate to allow a battery energy storage system on Chapel Lane in my constituency and ask for a debate. However, just this morning, I received the deeply disappointing and disturbing news of the closure of Aldridge Police Station. And I'd like to ask the Government, how on earth is this decision by the Labour Police and Crime Commissioner compatible with the Prime Minister's stated intention of strengthening neighbourhood policing?
Leader of the House.
Sorry to hear of the closure of a police station, but she will know that we are absolutely strengthening neighbourhood policing. We are putting 13,000 extra neighbourhood police officers on the front line. Part of the way in which that we're funding that is making sure that we are delivering services efficiently and effectively in local areas. I will get her a response on that, and I look forward to her raising in future the local battery storage unit in her constituency as well.
Sally Jamieson.
Thank you, Madam Deputy Speaker. This weekend I'll be taking part in a run with Active Fusion. Don't have to sound so surprised. With Active Fusion, who are a charity in my constituency that work with education providers and other charity and community providers to help deliver physical education activities for young people across Doncaster. So will the Leader of the House join me in celebrating the fantastic work done by Active Fusion? And can we also make time for a debate on how the Government can better support charities and organisations to deliver mental health and physical health activities for young people when we so desperately need it?
Leader of the House.
Well, can I wish her luck on her run? I'm glad she didn't ask me to join her, because that's not something I think the public are quite ready for just yet. But she's absolutely right that it's many voluntary organisations like Active Fusion that really do the vital work that the whole country needs in making sure that young people and others remain active and fit and healthy, and that we give them fun ways to do that, because that's vital to the future health of the nation. And they do all of this as volunteers, often or for free.
Sarah Dye.
Madam Deputy Speaker, ambulance crews strive every day to provide the very best care for their patients, but ambulances are not arriving to the most serious emergencies quickly enough. An 89-year-old Somerton constituent of mine recently had a fall at home and was left lying on the floor in agony for 10 hours. Sadly, this is all too common, as South Western Ambulance Service is amongst the worst for waiting times across the UK. So can we have a debate on government time about ambulance waiting times in Somerset?
Leader of the House.
Well, she's absolutely right. Ambulance wait times, which are so closely linked to A&E wait times, which are also closely linked to what's happening in many of our hospitals. This is the big legacy that we've inherited in terms of our NHS. There's no greater symptom of an NHS in crisis than these long and unacceptable ambulance wait times that she describes. That's why we've put record investment into the National Health Service in this year, and we will continue to prioritise the NHS in further spending rounds. We want to get A&E wait times and ambulance wait time right down, because this is completely unacceptable and putting lives at risk.
Katrina Murray.
Thank you, Madam Deputy Speaker. In the Hillhead, Waterside, Haresteins and particularly the Twyker parts of my constituency, the issues of buses, or probably more accurately the lack of them, is continually being raised with me. My constituents can't get access to local services, whether it's going to the bank or going to church. They need to change buses and wait for up to an hour for a connecting service, if that connecting service ever turns up. I'd like to request a debate in government time on local bus services and the need for them in local communities.
Leader of the House.
Well, she's absolutely right. That's why we're bringing forward the bus reform bill, which is currently making its way through the Lords. But she will know that in Scotland, under the Scottish National Party government, their bus routes have nearly halved in Scotland since 2006, and local authority franchising has been delayed for 5 years, which has been failing communities there. But as a result of our budget, the Scottish Government will receive its largest settlement in real terms since any time since devolution, and this really must be now used for a new direction for Scotland and to get the bus services and other services that her constituents so desperately need.
Robbie Moore.
Thank you, Madam Deputy Speaker. Despite stating in 2021 that they were, and I quote, in strong financial health, Labour-controlled Bradford Council are now wanting to put up council tax of my constituents by a whopping 15%. This is a shocking situation, and as a result of the continuous mismanagement by our council leaders, who have splashed millions of taxpayers' money on Bradford city centre projects, including £50 million of taxpayers' money on a music venue which is finished but not yet open, despite us having City of Culture, all whilst letting children's services degrade completely to an unacceptable level, and despite the last Conservative government stepping in and issuing a bailout to the council just last year. So can we have a debate in urgent government time on how we can stop local people across Keighley, Ilkley, Silsden, the Worth Valley and my wider constituency from paying the price for Bradford Council's leaders' failures?
Well, I have to gently say to the honourable gentleman, I think the failures were under the previous Conservative government, who left local government on its knees with years of austerity, moving money away from areas of high need, like his own constituency of Bradford, moving money away from areas of high need to areas of lower need. And he talks about children's services, and he will know that children's services costs have gone up and up and up in recent years, huge rise in demand, while the central government failed to provide any of the funding or the support that was needed for local authorities to get a grip of that. That's why we brought in our Children and Wellbeing Bill, which will begin to address some of those chronic costs facing local authorities with children's services, a bill I think he voted down the other week, but it's also why this government is putting local government finances back on an even keel and making sure that we deliver on the basis of need, not on the basis of politics.
Dave Robertson.
Thank you, Madam Deputy Speaker. Yesterday I received one of the best emails that I have received since becoming a Member of Parliament. It came from my constituent Gareth Stewart and was in relation to his son Hugo, who has finally secured his place at the Royal School for the Deaf in Derby. Hugo is deafblind and it took 2 years for his parents to be able to secure an educational healthcare plan for him. It had to go to tribunal because it was consistently blocked. And even though the school agreed to Hugo's place there ready for September, the County Council continued to fight Hugo's parents, so the resolution to this only came yesterday. I've spoken to Gareth several times about his case because it is so serious, and he was content with me raising it on the floor of the House today, only on the condition that he in his words, I used it to speak about the wider problems that we have in Staffordshire and with the SEND system. Too many parents face the same challenges, and parents so often use the phrase delaying tactics to me around the need to go to tribunals and the consistent arguments that they have to have at every single step of this process. Can the Leader of the House give us an update on what discussions she's had with Cabinet colleagues to bring about a bill to fix our broken SEND system? And can she bring forward a debate in this place about the shocking number of wrongful council decisions on SEND support that then end up overturned at tribunal?
Well, can I thank him for that? And I think receiving the email that he has from Gareth Stewart for getting the place at the Royal School for the Deaf, I think is an early reminder for him of how fulfilling the job of a Member of Parliament can be when we get such great emails from our constituents. It doesn't happen all that often, but hopefully it will happen often in his case. But his constituents and he are absolutely right to raise the chronic challenges that were faced by our special educational needs system, which a recent report of the NAO found was at the point of crisis. Costs are rising, demands are rising, yet outcomes continue to fall. This really is a broken system. And that's why this government is committed to addressing that. As an initial step, we've put an extra £1 billion into SEND in the recent budget. There have actually been 7 debates already in this parliamentary session on the issues of SEND. I think that just reflects the great importance that the House brings to these matters, and I will ensure the House is constantly updated on our plans.
Ben Maguire.
Thank you, Madam Deputy Speaker. From Bude to Bodmin and across my North Cornwall constituency, my constituents express their anger at having to pay astronomical fees to property management companies who provide little to no service. Will the Leader of the House grant a debate in government time on the right for freeholders to challenge these fees through arbitration and other dispute resolution mechanisms when services are simply not delivered?
Leader of the House.
Well, he's absolutely right. Unscrupulous managing agents really are a plague for many leaseholders and many homeowners in this country. This is the second time this has been raised just in this session by a member on this side too, which I think would give a cross-party, good backbench committee application there. But this government is committed to tackle the scourge of unscrupulous managing agents and put power back in the hands of leaseholders, and that's why we're bringing forward a draft leasehold reform bill later in this year.
Maurinder Just.
Thank you, Madam Deputy Speaker. At the request of several of my constituents in Wolverhampton West, I attended this morning a National Autistic Society event about the constant struggle and fight that autistic people face for support across health, including mental health, social care, education and employment. What strikes me, Madam Deputy Speaker, is a general ignorance about autism and what autistic people require. So would the Leader of the House please agree to a general debate in government time about autism and the inequalities faced by autistic people so that there is early diagnosis and support for those who are autistic, and so it can also be a policy priority for the government?
Leader of the House.
Well, absolutely. This is a very important issue, and we as a government want to see autistic people succeed in all aspects of their lives. The government provided £4.3 million this financial year to improve services for autistic children, but clearly much more needs to be done better and faster as well. I think this would make an extremely good topic for a debate.
Then objective.
Thank you, Madam Deputy Speaker. This week we saw the tragic murder of Leo Ross, who was just 12 years old. 2 weeks ago, 14-year-old Kaylin Bokassa. The fatal stabbing of a child has become an all too familiar occurrence. The number of teenagers murdered by knife has doubled in the past decade. Teenagers are twice as likely to be fatally stabbed as any other demographic. The government have pledged to halve knife crime, legislating to ban zombie knives, but they account for only 3.6% of murders involving a knife. Kitchen knives account for over 52.6%. Everybody has access to a drawer full of those in their own home. We desperately need a conversation about the root causes of knife crime, about why the situation is now worse than ever, and about why, shockingly, our children are now prepared to kill other children. Why they find it so easy to take a life. So will the Leader of the House make time in the parliamentary schedule to discuss the causes of knife crime?
Leader of the House.
Well, absolutely. Can I share his remarks about the awful news yesterday of the stabbing and murder of Leo Ross, just 12 years old, in the West Midlands. I think an age of my own child, and I'm sure many others who would be watching, and that of his constituents and others as well. This government is committed to halving knife crime over the next decade. That's an incredibly ambitious agenda that drives much of our activity in this space. The Prime Minister brought together a coalition to tackle knife crime in number 10 Downing Street in September. We've taken very quick action to ban zombie knives and dangerous ninja swords. Further measures will be coming forward in the crime and policing bill later this year. But he's absolutely right. This takes a strategic, holistic, wide approach that also looks at preventative measures, education, youth services, and brings all the players in our communities together to tackle the scourge of knife crime.
Antonia Bands.
Thank you very much, Madam Deputy Speaker. I was disappointed to hear of plans to close the old Chain Yard pub in the Coseley area of my constituency to make way for yet another convenience store. Will the Leader of the House give her support to campaigners in Coseley fighting the closure of their local? And will the government make time for a debate on the vital role of local pubs in local communities?
Leader of the House.
Well, local pubs play an absolutely vital role in local communities as a social hub, a gathering, a centre point, a focal point for community get-togethers. And this government supports our local pubs. That's one of the reasons that we reduced alcohol duty on draft products in the recent budget, and it's also why we are committed to the regeneration and support of our town centres and high streets. But I think this would make an extremely good topic for a debate, and I look forward to her raising it.
Lincoln Jopp.
Thank you, Madam Deputy Speaker. My train got cancelled on my commute home last night from Waterloo to Sunbury. But this gave me a wonderful opportunity to catch up on one of my favourite radio programmes, that of Mr Matt Chorley on BBC Radio 5 Live. And my joy was only increased when I had the opportunity to listen to a rare interview given by the Leader of the House. During which she said, and I quote, "We are not going for the sugar rush of quick growth." Given that since the government was elected, the economy hasn't grown at all, could I, on behalf of the people of Spelthorne, firstly congratulate her on her mastery of understatement, secondly ask her what sort of growth she is going for, and lastly, when it's going to come?
Leader of the House.
Well, can I thank you for listening to my, I wouldn't say that rare an interview, and I obviously am here once a week being fully accountable to him and his colleagues for all of my comments, which I will happily do today. I think the honourable gentleman is the successor to the Chancellor who crashed the economy. Is that right? Or maybe not. Maybe I'll get a letter for decency if I could just desist from ever saying that again. But I do congratulate him on replacing him. I'm sure he's a better replacement. But this government wants to see sustainable, long-term, productive, high-skill, high-wage growth with an economy that's healthy. The challenges that we've inherited are so deep and profound that's why it's taking time to turn the oil tanker around, as he will know. But his government's record of living standards falling for the very first time in our history over the course of the last Parliament is perhaps a record that he should reflect on a bit more before he raises it with me.
Mark Sewards.
Thank you, Madam Deputy Speaker. At my surgery in Driglington, I met a constituent who's been suffering terribly as a result of mesh implants. Now, despite having multiple surgeries to remove them, she still suffers with long-term health consequences and now has cancer in the affected area, which she attributes to the mesh implants. My right honourable friend, the member for Harrow, hosted a Westminster Hall debate on this in December, but those affected are still waiting for justice. They're still waiting for an answer. So can I ask the Leader of the House to consider holding a debate in government time in this place on the urgent need to support those suffering with long-term health consequences as a result of mesh implants?
Well, can I thank him for raising that? I think last month's debate was an opportunity to hear those powerful testimonies, and I commend him and the campaigners for continuing to raise this important issue, which was a very live one in the last Parliament as well. The Government is carefully considering the work done by the Patient Safety Commissioner and the resulting Hughes report, and I will ensure that the House is updated at the earliest opportunity on the Government's reflections to that. But I would encourage him maybe to apply for a backbench business debate on the floor of the House on these important matters, because I know they'll be well attended.
Tom Gordon.
Thank you, Madam Deputy Speaker. A year ago today, the former MPs Theresa May and Sir George Howarth launched their inquiry report into type 1 diabetes and disordered eating. The report made out a number of recommendations to ensure the funding and continuation of Tide pilot services that had been started around the country. Since then, 2 services have shut down in the South Coast, Bournemouth and London, and remaining 5 pilot sites, including in the Humber and North Yorkshire, are set to run out of funding in March this year. If that happens, we'll end up with vulnerable patients put at risk as a result of those services being lost. So will the Leader of the House allow a debate in government time on this matter as a matter of urgency?
Leader of the House.
Well, can I join him in paying tribute to the former Prime Minister and former Leader of the House, I think, or former members on their campaigning, continue to campaign on the issues of type 1 diabetes. And he's absolutely right that making sure we've got community-led preventative services in relation to type 1 diabetes and other infections or diseases is the focus of this government, and that's absolutely as it should be. I will ensure that he gets a ministerial response about the closing of those services and what's caused that and what plans the government has to take that forward, and ensure he's updated.
Lee Pitcher.
Deputy Speaker. Last weekend I had the pleasure of meeting with the friends of Doncaster Sheffield Airport at Little Baltry's restaurant. This incredible group of volunteers have supported the airport since its original opening back in 2005 and can't wait to be volunteering once again once those doors reopen. Will the Leader of the House join me in recognising the vital role that volunteers like the Friends of Doncaster Sheffield Airport play in ensuring the success of local projects right across the country, and will she join me in wishing them and the campaigners success in their continued efforts to get that airport reopened?
Leader of the House.
Well, the honourable gentleman is quickly making a reputation for himself in this place as Mr Doncaster Airport. There's no question of that. And like him, I am really looking forward to the skies of Doncaster being filled again with aircraft coming into this important airport in his constituency. And I look forward to him raising it again and again and again at these sessions until that happens.
Jim Shannon.
Thank you, Madam Deputy Speaker. Can it's a real pleasure to ask the Leader of the House a question. Questions are similar, but they're nonetheless very, very important. An issue of urgent concern. There's been an alarming violent increase in the number of killings of Christians in Nigeria, with 63 deaths alone reported between November 27th and December 25th of last year. Of those, half occurred over the 2 days in late December. On the 22nd of December, 15 people were killed in the Plateau State in Nigeria. And on the 25th of December, which of course when we were all celebrating the birth of our Lord Jesus Christ, 12 people were killed in the Benue State. So can the Leader of the House join me, first of all, in condemning these murders and killings, and ask the FCDO Minister and Office to address the escalating violence against Christians in Nigeria and to ensure the safety of citizens there? Thank you so much.
Leader of the House.
Well, absolutely. As ever, the honourable gentleman raises a very serious and important issue, and terrorist groups like Boko Haram and Islamic State West Africa have sought to undermine the right to freedom of religious belief in Nigeria, and that's why we're providing £38 million in programming to strengthening peace and resilience in Nigeria to help tackle the root causes of violence in the region. But I will ensure that he is constantly updated on these matters.
Graham Downey.
Thank you, Madam Deputy Speaker. Before Christmas, I received a very lovely letter, as opposed to an email, from Maisie Fox, a 6-year-old pupil at St Thomas's Primary School in Rosyth in my constituency. Maisie was very concerned about the safety of her walk and her route to school, which was making it unable for her to use her scooter or her bike crossing the very busy A985 in Rosyth. I accompanied Maisie on her walk to school a couple of weeks ago, and indeed it was incredibly dangerous. Will the Leader of the House, first of all, congratulate Maisie on being a young person with an interest in politics, something we should always make sure we're encouraging in young people, and will she do everything she can to work with the Scottish Government to make sure roads are safer for routes to school?
Leader of the House.
Well, absolutely. Can I congratulate Maisie on being mentioned in the Chamber and getting her name in Hansard, and I'm sure he will get a copy of that to her. She raises a really important issue around safe walking routes to school. We want to encourage young people to walk on their own where possible as well to school, and that's why it's absolutely important that we take issues of road traffic, safety and of safe walking routes to school incredibly seriously. And absolutely, this is something that's almost been raised here again today. The Scottish Government now has the funds that it needs to take some of these issues as seriously as we do.
Joe Platt.
Thank you, Madam Deputy Speaker. Madam Deputy Speaker, I often joke excuse me, that the time between being an MP was less a career break but more a sabbatical. But during this time I had the pleasure and the great opportunity of working at a fantastic facility at Lee Spinners Mill. We created affordable spaces for local businesses and community organisations to set up and thrive. But remarkably, 80% of these businesses are owned by women. An inspiring example of inclusive talent and growth. So does the Leader of the House agree that we need more research and debate on how to better support and nurture future women entrepreneurs, and can she bring forward a debate for women in business?
Well, can I first of all say that we greatly missed the honourable member when she was on her political sabbatical, one that she didn't want to take, but I think one that she enjoyed. But it's great to see her back in her place, and I hope that she never goes on another sabbatical again. But I know, because of her work in that time, of the great work that the Lee Spinners Mill does, and it's great to hear that there's so many women entrepreneurs using that platform to take their businesses forward, and can I thank her for raising that today.
The final question, Neil Duncan-Jordan.
Thank you, Madam Deputy Speaker. Sunseeker International is a luxury boat building company in my constituency of Poole, employing around 2,000 people in the local area. But just before Christmas, they issued temporary layoff notices to more than 100 workers with the promise that they will come back to work on the 27th of January. As this date approaches, the workers now fear the worst. Throughout this difficult time, the company has failed to tell its staff what is happening. So will my right honourable friend confirm that under our Employment Rights Bill, we will ensure that employers have to consult and inform their workers when facing such challenges? And will she agree to a debate in government time on the role and importance of shipbuilding in the UK economy?
Leader of the House.
Well, absolutely, and thank him for raising that here with us today. He's absolutely right. This government has brought forward a huge boost to workers' rights in these situations through our Employment Rights Bill, which is currently in committee in the House. It will shortly be coming back to this place for report stage, where we can discuss at great length how we want to take action against fire and rehire and support workers in the difficult circumstances that he describes.
That concludes business questions, and I will give the front benches a few moments to change over before we start the statements.